Hey, what's up guys? So today we are going to try and fix this scene. As you can see, I've downloaded a sample scene from the Unity Asset Store. A link will be down in the description down below. So essentially what we are going to do is try and make this scene a bit more attractive and polished, you may say, so that you can use it in your games. So we'll go through the different steps that I would usually apply towards my own games, and we'll apply it to this one so you can really see the difference. And at any time you can check the timestamps in the description or the chapter markers inside the video so that you can go to specific pointers and markers inside this video. So let's get started. So the first thing that's obviously wrong is the sun. The sun is just too bright. So what we are going to do is we are just going to drop it down until something around here. Let's do it 5.4. This looks good, right? So for a daytime scene, this looks amazing. And we'll also do a night shot. So we'll just duplicate the directional light so I can quickly switch over them too. And for this one, we can drop the intensity to something like this, so it's really dark. Okay, so this is the first step, is to control the light intensity that goes into the scene. The second step is actually the temperature. All right, so this is a nighttime shot, so we want something very gloomy, very blue. This works. And as for the sun, we want something a little bit more yellowish, maybe like this. Obviously, you could also play around with the filtering. If, let's say, you're making something on another planet, let's say you were on Mars, then this kind of gives the Martian look, right? Very reddish. Or if you were in some kind of a mystical game or like purplish game, then you could just apply some tint. But for our use case, I'll leave it as white and just play around with the temperature. So this is the first step, is to actually adjust the light temperature and intensity. As you can see, this instantly just gives the scene more pop, all right? It just pops more and it's overall brighter and more appealing. So that was the first step. Now, the second step is for me to actually add a skybox, all right? And as you can probably see right now, the skybox is basically just whatever the camera is set to. So here it's a color. You could change the color if you want. If you want a simple skybox, you could change the color, but we are not going with that. Leave it as sky. What we are going to do is we are going to add a new value, and we get this one, the sky and fog global value. All right, let's hit add. And in case I forgot to mention, guys, this is using HDRP, but the same principle should technically apply for URP. So you feel free to follow along. Maybe one or two features might be different there, but overall the same steps should still apply. So here we've got some settings already pre-made for the actual sky object. And right now this looks incredible, right? It looks good. So we'll leave it as is. Again, if you are doing it for something not on Earth, all right, then you probably could just use custom planet here and then just change details. For instance, there's a ground tint. You could put it as green, and that will just give you a greenish kind of fog and mist. But that's not our planet. Our planet is Earth, so we'll just leave it as Earth. Okay, so we'll leave everything as the default because for our game, for this use case, it works well. But we are going to add one more thing to the sky, which would be the clouds. So we are going to add a cloud layer here. And as for the ambient mode, we are going to add it to dynamic. This is for the lighting especially. So now, as you can see, we've got beautiful clouds in the sky. And instantly, this looks way better. Now we can add a speed to the clouds on top. And the cloud should technically move. We can also change the orientation of the cloud. If you press play, then you should see them move slowly, hopefully. And as you can see, let's increase this and Okay, wait, is it moving? Okay, no, okay, yeah, sorry. Roger that. So this is for the cloud, not the cloud. Yeah, we need to add the cloud layer. So let's just add the cloud layer here. I forgot to add this. And now if we click on all, here we can control the clouds. So as you can see, I can just control the rotation of the cloud. I can control the exposure of the clouds. Obviously, we leave it at 0, or you could technically change it a little bit. Like this. Looks great. And then for the wind, we can add it horizontally. And then here is where we control the speed of the wind. Alright, so for instance, we want a wind that does not go very fast. Yeah, so maybe somewhere around 150. Yes, 150 works. Again, you can change the orientation of the wind. And after that, you could technically add some tint to the cloud if you really wanted to. So maybe something like this color. This gives them a really nice golden hue and color, which makes it look cool. And then the most important part is for it to cast shadows. And we'll leave this here for now, and we'll just tweak it later on. Okay, I'll put it on high, but you can feel free to just put a very low shadow resolution if you're targeting lower end PCs. So now we've got a solid base, and overall it definitely looks way nicer than previously. And we can exit play mode. All of it should be saved. Now that this has been done, you could technically also add volumetric clouds. This is mostly if you want the clouds to have a depth. Let's say you're making a flying game, alright, where you can fly planes, then the volumetric clouds would actually be very useful for you. As you can see, the clouds are actual game objects. They actually move around. You cannot actually pick them, but they have depth. So if you can actually fly through them, is what I mean. But for our use case, I don't think we really need volumetric clouds in this environment. So we can just disable these because we're not going to use them. Right, so I'm just going to remove it. So that was the second part, which is to add the actual sky and clouds. Now let's add some more shadows to the scene. So here, let's enable the shadow map in the main sun directional light. Okay, instantly you can just see without even tweaking anything. It just helps create contrast into the scene, which makes it look better. And then this, you can basically change it. But for our case, we'll leave it on every frame because this is not a real game. So I really don't care about the performance. I just want it to look good. But obviously, if it was in a real game, then you'd have to really think about when you want the shadow map to update. So the resolution, I'll have it on high or maybe ultra. Okay, we'll keep it on ultra for this one. And again, you can tint your shadows if you really wanted to. If you are going for a stylized look, then this can be very helpful. And for our use case, I might actually put it more of a grayish or a deep, a deep blue looks good. This looks amazing actually, a deep blue. And then these will leave as is, and we can just enable contact shadows. This is very little, but it just makes a big difference. So now that we've got shadows, we've got proper lighting, and we've got clouds, we can actually move around to post-processing. This is actually the second most important thing into achieving good graphics into the game. But even just now, as you can probably see, the game itself looks and feels better. if we were to disable this, for instance, and we were to disable the shadows, as you can see, this is where it was. Adding the shadows and then adding this one makes it way better. It looks better. And there is also the element of fog in it. This was added by default. And if you really wanted to, you could again really mess around with the settings so that it is how you want it to be. But for our use case, we are not going to use the fog as such. I just want something that really blurs the far away objects. So this works, the default settings works. And now, before we move on to the post-processing, what we want to do is to get a good angle of the actual directional light. As you can see, if I were to move the rotation of the directional light, it creates very interesting composition in terms of the shadows and lighting. So we can actually use this to our advantage when actually making the scene. Alright, so for instance, this looks horrible and this definitely looks nice. This is too dark. Maybe this also looks nice. Yeah, I think I'll have it here. Right, so for me this looks great, but again, depending on your scenes, you might actually find a better spot or rotation. And just keep in mind that this is directional light, so the actual position has zero impact on the light itself. It's only the rotation that does. Alright, so now that we've got the correct rotation, we can go around and make the actual volume itself. Alright, so for the post-processing. So here, all I'm doing is adding a new volume and creating a new volume profile. Now, let's start with the lighting. Here, we are going to add the ambient occlusion to the scene. This is actually what's going to add those shadows here, as you can see, in the corners of the buildings and everywhere else. It just really helps to create more contrast in the scene. Obviously, you don't want to have the maximum intensity because this can really make everything look ugly. You have to actually be very smart about it as to how much you're actually adding. Around here, for instance, this should be good. So I'm just basically tweaking the values until I see them look pleasing to me. Alright, so this looks great. As you can see, it helps with the shadows a little bit better. It adds more contrast to the scene and makes everything look more grounded and adds more depth. Look at this, for instance. This here, it looks flat, but with this, you actually get some more depth. See? So this really helps. The next thing is still under lighting. What we are going to use is the indirect light controller. This is another very important thing. This allows you to control the amount of light bounces that affects the scene. For instance, if we were to just put 0 indirect light, then this, as you can see, there is no indirect lighting, so everything looks way more contrasty. And if we were to just increase it exponentially, then it just makes everything brighter. But this is the indirect light. Then we've got the reflection light. This is just the light that affects the reflection. Okay, so if a light goes here and then is reflected, that's what it actually means. So as you can see, if you were to just increase it, the colors gets affected because that's what the reflection affects. So maybe something like 0.2. So 0.5 should be good, and 0.8 should look great on this. As you can see, it just makes a very subtle difference, but I do think it's for the best. Now, some screen space global illumination. This is actually quite powerful, and especially if you're using ray tracing. But for this one, we're not using ray tracing. This would be for another video where I'm going to apply ray tracing. So maybe the effect is not as apparent as it should be. But if I were to switch to ray tracing, then let me just find the render asset. Right, it is. Let me find ray tracing and just enable it so that you can actually see the difference it makes. Oh yeah, we definitely need screen space reflection, so make sure this is enabled here. Screen space shadows as well should be enabled. Okay, here it is, ray tracing. And let's switch to the game view. So yeah, so now that ray tracing is enabled, this is what global illumination does. It's again just a lighting technique that allows the ray of lights to better bounce off everything. As you can see, it just makes a little bit, it looks better, definitely. But again, as I've said, we are not using ray tracing here in this project. So I'm just going to disable the RT effects on this one, and then I'll just enable it again in a later video where we are going to dive into how to implement and set up the ray tracing workflow for the project. So here we are just going to enable this, okay, and let it do its job. As you can see, the result is very minimal, but it makes a very subtle difference that makes everything look a little bit better and more pleasing, especially here apparent in the bushes and where there is a lot of light bouncing around. And we are also going to add this screen space reflection. We are going to have it for we don't really have transparent objects, so we can just disable this. We don't really need it, but for the opaque we definitely need. And we've got different algorithms. I prefer PBR accumulation, and then all of this we can enable. Here we can have it as high, so this should technically give you better reflection in your scene. And here you can also decide on what is the minimum smoothness that you want the object to be in order for it to be affected by the screen space reflection. We definitely also want the sky to be reflected. And we can keep everything else the same. And the reason that you are not actually seeing much of a difference might actually be because none of these materials are reflective. But if I were to add a cube, for instance, right here, and if I were to make it reflective, let's put it here, let's create a material. Right, so now we've got the cube here. If I decrease the, if I increase the smoothness and the metallic, and now, as you can probably see, it's going to give like better reflection overall. Let's, okay, let's relate it here. And now if we play around with the screen space reflection, we'd see that the reflection is a little bit different. So here, if we were to disable the screen space reflection, as you can see, the reflections is way more accurate let me zoom into this so you can probably see it better. Hopefully you can see it. The reflection becomes way better and it's more accurate to the physical sizes, especially apparent here. So this is what screen space reflection does. It's always a good idea to have it enabled, especially if you have a lot of reflective surfaces. Usually this should technically have them, but I think the asset does not include a reflection map or the normal map. Yeah, there's no normal maps. So that's definitely holding us back here. But I mean, alright, we can do without it for this one. I might actually create some normal map just to showcase how it behaves. But that's something for another episode. For now, we can just disable this cube. And in the lighting tab, we are done. Now we can actually go towards the shadowing. Here we can add shadows. Here you can dictate the maximum distance of the shadows. If you have it too low, then you won't see any shadows. If you have it too high, then performance might be an issue. So for our use case, I'm going to have it as 1500, simply because this is the max I can see. But again, this requires careful consideration if you're making it inside of a real game, alright, where performance is something you need to cater for. And here we can also have the contact shadows. This is another very subtle thing, but as you can see here, it just makes a little bit of a difference. But this one, I like to just have it just a little bit, alright, nothing too fancy. Maybe like this, and then just decrease the opacity just a bit, like so, and have it as high. Like this. This looks good. So we are not done yet, but you probably can see the difference that this makes inside of our game. Alright, it just helps create more contrast and makes everything pop a little bit better. So now that we've done with these, what we can do is go under the post-processing. Here we have things like bloom, depth of field, and all that stuff. So let me actually create another volume just for the post-processing one. Okay, so we can just keep them separate. Here is post-processing. So let's start off with the depth of field. All right, we'll have it as manual ranges. So as you can see now, everything is blurred out except for this one here. But this is a little bit too much, okay, too intense. So what we are going to do is, instead, we are going to affect the far range first. Then we are going to affect the one here. So let me start off by making this at 1500 and this start at 1000. Okay, it's too much. Let's bring it down to 850, still too much, 750, 100, 550 maybe, and then add, let's say, 850, okay. 650. So I'm basically just trying to find a good distance for where I want the blur to start and end. Okay, let me just find one and then I'll just, yes, so this actually works quite well. As you can see the difference that it makes. It helps just defocus everything in the background. We don't really need that. And it just creates a more cinematic feel to the actual game itself. And yep, so that's about it for the depth of field. Let's add, let's say, the tone mapping. We don't really need that. I like to keep it as ACs, just because it helps with the contrast. I like the colors. But again, you can have something more neutral if you want, or you can even have your own custom LUTs if you really want to. and you can really go in and change the different settings based on your preference. But I really don't like to change much here. I do really like the AC's color space, so this works for me. But as you can see, this also works quite fine. Actually, okay, yeah, I'm actually going to use this one. Yeah, I'm actually going to use this one. I just end up liking it a bit more than AC's right now. Alright, so that's looking good so far. Now let's play around with the bloom a little bit. We might actually get some good result here. So what does the bloom do? It basically tries to scatter the around a very bright light source. So maybe you're not seeing it here, but if I were to add a point light, for instance, and let me just place this point light somewhere close, make it a little bit smaller, and break it here, for instance. Now, if we were to play around with bloom, you'd see that if I decrease the threshold, increase the intensity, and decrease the scatterness, as you can see, this really bright source actually has some kind of halo effect. I'm not sure how to actually describe it, but you can clearly see that it's just a little bit blurry, and as you can see here, it just gives this halo effect. This is what bloom is. So we don't have a very bright point light. So what we're going to do is we're just going to play around with the intensity and the scatterness, so as to get a nice look, especially if our sun is going to hit some of the buildings. Now let's add some chromatic aberration. This actually gives some kind of this effect on your image. I really enjoy it, but obviously you cannot actually do it like this. Although I do believe that maybe this might be something you would want if you're making a very dizzy or drunken state, then this definitely looks quite nice. You could actually combine this with something like the Panini projection here, right? So to make everything look more dizzy-like, as you can see. But this is not the look they're going for today. So I'm just going to slightly, very slightly, increase the intensity of the chromatic aberration. Very, very slightly. As you can see, it's very minimal, but it helps a little bit. And now let's go and find something else to add. We are going to get to the shadows, mids and highs in a bit. Maybe add a little bit of a film grain. Okay, so this is what film grain does. Hopefully you can see that. It adds noise to the image, and I really enjoy it. This looks good. Now let's decrease this to something less noticeable. This looks good. Here this should technically look better. It's not that noticeable, but it makes a little bit of a difference. And now let's do the shadows, highlights, and midtones. So this actually allows you to control the lights, the shadows. As you can see, I can increase the shadows. I can decrease the mids if I really wanted, and the highs. But this breaks the image, so you need to be very careful about it. Another thing that you can do is also to tint the different parts of the image. Yeah. So now let me show you something. So this is a website called colormine.io. I'll leave the link in the description down below. And what it essentially allows you to do is very simple, is to generate random colors that matches together. Another version of this would be Adobe's colors. Here, so Adobe colors This is the exact same, but it just offers you a little bit more tools. You can even pick your own color and then have everything change based on this. So the reason why this is very interesting is because now we can find, let's say I want this color. We can use this color to tone our shadows. Obviously, this does not give us a very nice way to change these colors, but you could technically eyeball them. So for instance, this is a grayish blue. So this would be something around here. And now, if we were to take this color, oops, sorry about this, guys. So if we were to take this color and then actually apply it here, now I can find complementary colors or then split complementary, and then I can find another color that complements it. For instance, this color, it's an orange, a desert orange, and then I can push the highlights into this direction. Okay, and then we can just keep the mids a little bit more in the center, right? Or maybe even push it a little bit higher. So now, as you can see, it allows us to really tone our game. It gives it a very nice and appealing look to it. This looks way better. So now there is not much we can do. We can technically add some kind of binary projection or even lens distortion if we really want. This allows us to just make the center appear to be closer, like this. This makes it look good. So yeah, so that's about it. And again, you could technically, we forgot to add the screen space lens flare to the mix. This, as you can see, just adds some lens flare to the game. We don't want something too intense. Maybe something around 7.5 looks good. And we can keep everything else the same. And yeah, so now this looks amazing. Maybe decrease it a little bit here. Great. So this is our sun, and this is the nighttime. This is a little bit too dark, so you could technically increase the intensity a little bit. But as you can see, if we were to just disable all of this, this is where we started. Wait, actually, this is not where we started. This is where we started. No shadows. This is where we started, guys. And then here is what we made. So it's a really big difference. As you can see, this instantly makes everything looks way better. And you can always come around and really tweak everything you want. For instance, you can increase the exposure if you want it brighter. You can increase the contrast if you want it more contrasty or less contrasty, depending on your taste. And you could even add some more saturation to the image if you really wanted to, for instance. And feel free to just mess around with the different things that we've applied, the different effects that we've applied today. So hopefully this can help you make your own games look way better. Keep an eye on the next episode where we are going to dig into how we can apply ray tracing to this very game, so it makes everything looks a little bit better as well. So I hope you guys actually enjoyed today's video and you've actually learned a little bit. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Also, if you've got any questions, queries or suggestions, do leave them in the comment section. I do actually read them and respond to you guys. So on this note, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next one. Bye!